Hello, this is History Shorts with the Artifactual Scholar. Today, I'll be talking about the Mansfield anti-abolition riots of 1836. During the first half of the 19th century, American society was deeply divided on the issue of slavery. Even in overwhelmingly abolitionist Massachusetts, there was a vocal minority that was pro-slavery. Occasionally, the debates between these two opposing sides turned violent. Such was the case in Mansfield in October 1836. The prominent abolitionist speaker, Charles C. Burleigh, had been invited to present a lecture on slavery at the Center Meeting House. Burleigh, eccentric in dress and habits, was renowned for his eloquence and skill as a debater. His presence in Mansfield was much anticipated by many citizens of the town. However, there were those who did not support the abolitionist cause and had no desire to hear Burleigh's speech. On October 9, 1836, the day before Burleigh's scheduled appearance, a group of pro-slavery advocates had gathered in Mulberry Tavern to plan a protest. Seeking advice to avoid legal prosecution, the group consulted an attorney, who advised them that a group of fewer than 30 unarmed men or fewer than 12 armed men would not be considered a riot, and therefore they would not be in violation of the law. The next day, as a large, eager crowd arrived at the meeting house, the anti-abolition group put their plan into action. About a dozen men and boys, armed with drums and bugles, entered the meeting house and occupied the upper gallery. When Burleigh rose to address the gathering, the protesters began pounding on their drums and blowing their horn. Burleigh attempted to speak over the din, but as his voice rose, so did the noise pouring from the gallery. Realizing that he could not be heard, the speaker stopped and sat down. The town constable, Chandler Cobb, demanded that the rioters cease their disturbances or leave the meeting. This demand was met by drums, bugle, and scorn. Gathering some men to assist him, Constable Cobb climbed up to the gallery to disperse the rioters, but the men were grabbed and beaten and forced back down the stairs, their shirts torn and faces bloodied. The constable then read the riot act to the protesters, demanding they disperse or face punishment. The pro-slavery rioters ignored him. The constable then sent for the first selectman, Solomon Pratt, to enforce the act. While Pratt was being summoned, a certain Mr. Foster Bryant from New York rose and began an unsolicited tirade against abolition. When Pratt finally arrived, he pointedly refused to look at the rioters in the gallery, and rather than trying to restore order and allow the lecture to continue, dispersed the whole gathered assembly. As the audience began to leave, the rioters cheered and banged on their drums. Burleigh followed the crowd out and addressed the people from the steps of the meeting house. When the rioters realized this, they exited the building and began their noisy protest in front of the building. Burleigh quickly re-entered the meeting house and addressed those who remained inside. Seeing this, some of the rioters went back into the building and continued their disturbance. Finally, Burleigh conceded defeat and walked across the South Common to a waiting carriage that whisked him away. Despite having his lecture interrupted, Burleigh's efforts in Mansfield were not entirely unsuccessful. He did manage to recruit about 50 townspeople to the abolitionist cause, a number that would grow to about 300 in a few months' time. As for the rioters, 2 of them were eventually tried and convicted for assaulting the constable. The Mansfield anti-abolition riot of 1836 was a microcosm of the social discord that was widespread in antebellum America. Similar incidents became common across the country throughout the 1830s, 40s, and 50s. This has been History Shorts. Thanks for watching.